Hey, everybody, this is your boy John from Geeks from the Multiverse podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Marvel versus Star Wars TV shows, baby. I'll tell you, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very involved with all the information. Like, which one's better? We don't know. We'll find out. So tune in. Hey, everybody. Again, this is your boy John, and with me, as always, is Matt.
What's up, geeky people?
So today, we're going to be talking about Marvel and Star Wars TV shows. But before we get into that, guys, make sure to follow us on Spotify and also, again, share that. It's going to be very helpful for us with our ratings as well as, just being able to, spread the word. It helps us in the long run. And also, we love and appreciate you guys with all the love and support that you guys give us, okay? Yes, we make jokes that, 7 people really like this, but, come on. We're trying to get, more people to, show that love, you know what I mean? Because, we're just two guys, man. That's it. But anyways, when we're, talking about today, though, right? It's tough, man. You got Marvel, you got Star Wars. These two are really, contenders, right? So they have their own rights and their own bragging in some ways because they're building their own universes, right? So Marvel's kind of, I'm not saying hasn't really taken the lead, but like, Star Wars is basically now starting to build their own universe after so many years, right? Because they've already done the series and trilogies, things like that. They made the sagas, right? So they've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But like, Marvel kind of made the universe thing a real reality well before, Star Wars ever did that. Marvel was kind of that, pioneering piece, but then Star Wars was like, you know what? We're going to then, follow that. And then we're going to make our own little universe out of it. So it's one of those things that I just think that, Marvel kind of took the lead on, but like Star Wars is now kind of developing it in their own different sense and kind of, they make the stories, but then they're going to be like, hey, we're going to build upon that with like different side stories. So that way it makes it more interesting to, kind of get more, characters involved where Marvel's like, yeah, we're going to build the characters, but then we're also going to, throw in some other side stories to kind of go involved with whatever is going on at that time.
Yeah, I mean, both of the franchises, listen, they're huge franchises. You got Marvel, you got Star Wars, and yes, they are both Disney for the most part.
Well, Marvel, yes. Granted, before Disney ever did anything with Marvel, Marvel did stand on its own for like a little bit, but they also were bankrupt. So they kind of needed that support,
Yeah.
right? Star Wars, Lucasfilms did an amazing job on itself. Disney just was like, oh, we need to get this now because if we don't, someone else is going to do it.
Well, and that's the thing, I think, with the very difference between, the Marvel franchises, franchise in general and Star Wars was before Disney kind of took the reins of it. George Lucas really just held on to the reins where nobody really could do a Star Wars project outside of George Lucas because he held it so tight and was like, no, this is how it's going to be. It's not that he had he did have ultimate control of it, but he wanted to make sure whatever happened in that Star Wars universe made sense for the Star Wars universe.
Well, right. Then you got like different, authors that have made books regarding certain things, of the Star Wars lore and things like that. But granted, George Lucas made the lore and the universe himself, and then build upon it. And of course, like I said, there's different authors that kind of chimed in a little bit and kind of get more details and characters and so on and so forth. But like Marvel, for example, again, it was based on comics. That's all it is. It's all based on comic books and from back in the day. So like when you look at Marvel versus DC, DC technically has been out a lot longer than Marvel did at the time. But you look at the comic books back in the day versus now, it's a whole new ball game. So like you look at stuff that, the very first Superman comic back in like the 1920s when it was called Action Comics. That thing was amazing. Everyone's like, oh, it's only a nickel. Yeah, okay, try buying a comic book for a nickel nowadays. It's more like, 20, $30 or probably more than that. But, I'm just saying, and it's weird because like you look at comic books, they're really only meant to be like what, 30, 40, maybe 50 pages if depending on what kind of, material you're looking at, whatever. So like it's not meant to be really long, but like, when you look at comic books and the way it was scripted and everything, it was, they were short little series, but there was multiple in a series
Right.
based on those characters and so forth. So again, Marvel has the that history of looking at all the the different characters and whatnot, and they have all that lore from everything from way back when and even till now. But with Star Wars, it's like, yeah, it was only George Lucas. He was writing books. He was building the characters. He was doing all this, and he was creating his own little universe. But granted, he did it backwards. But again, that's neither here or there. The main focus of really today, guys and gals, and whoever you want to be called. Okay, I'm just going to say that now. Is the focus is Star Wars, Marvel. Who has better quality? Who has better content?
Yeah,
Who
and
has better this?
we went with 5 different parameters when we're talking, and we're not talking like the movies, we're not talking the comic books, we're not talking characters. We're strictly talking the TV shows between the two franchises.
Right? Because I mean, they have, and again, they have their own respective bragging rights in their own
Right.
ways. But again, the 5 categories.
So yeah, we went with 5 different categories, and each of these categories are quantity versus quality, amount of content, consistency, relatable to the movies, and animated versus live action.
Yeah, and and that to me is a very reasonable kind of like, okay, those are some good categories to really based on, which one is better in that regard. Because not everything has to be based in, just one, for example, like Marvel doesn't have to always be the number one on everything. Because there's definitely pros and cons for both series.
There's definitely pros and cons, and the way that we kind of measured each of them, I mean, they're pretty even across. I mean, both have their pros and cons, and they're both pretty even with the pros and the cons. I think if we start with Star Wars, because that's the first one we have listed, um, right off the bait, right off the bait,
Right off the bait.
right out of the gate, we have the animated shows, and there's a whole list of them. I mean, you got Druids, which is an older, much older show. Ewoks, the Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance, the Bad Batch, Visions, Tales of the Jedi, the Young Jedi Adventures. These are all animated shows.
So like I can tell you I've watched let's say the Clone Wars a little bit. Yeah, I can't. You know what to say? For me, I think it's just really the Clone Wars. I've only watched here and there, but like I haven't seen all the other ones. Like the Young Jedi Adventures is more for like, if I'm not mistaken, for like little kids. We're talking like
it's for little kids. But the funny thing is, like, even though it is geared for little kids, there's actually canon content in that cartoon.
Let me guess. Did you watch
animated show, cartoon, whatever you want to call it?
Well, no, man,
I have not watched.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
But some of the articles and things that in doing research for this episode, each of these has canon moments or mentions in each of these in what's canon right now.
Okay.
And obviously, I mean, I've seen all of Clone Wars, I've seen all of Rebels. I haven't watched Bad Batch. Those are kind of, I guess, right now the big 3 as far as like the animated shows. Now we go to the live action shows, and we go to Mandalorian, and these are all kind of brand new because, well, with Disney they just started doing them, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, this has only been within the last few years. I mean,
Right.
because that's really what it has been.
So we have the Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, Ahsoka, which just ended not too long ago,
right.
and then 2024 will bring the Skeleton Crew and supposedly the Acolyte if it does indeed come out.
I mean, so I know Matt and we talked about a lot of the Star Wars TV shows in particular, and I know we've done an episode on Ahsoka, kind of doing the overview and whatnot.
Yep.
But like, finally, I've seen, yes, I've seen all of Mandalorian. I feel like I really need to kind of watch the Book of Boba Fett. I didn't really give it a shot. I think in the very first couple of episodes, I didn't find it very interesting. That's just me because just kind of like looking more into it. But I don't know. I feel like I got to give it a shot in some ways. But
I think the overall character from the show, Boba Fett has always been a fan favorite character, which it's weird because in the original, I'm talking 4, 5, and 6, not the 1, 2, and 3 movies.
right,
Boba Fett doesn't really. You're talking maybe the second movie, he has a little bit more screen time, but you're talking about a guy that has minutes of screen time in 4, 5, and 6 minutes
right.
of screen time, and somehow he becomes probably more popular before 1, 2, and 3 come out. More popular than like Obi-Wan, and more popular, just as popular maybe as Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker.
Well, so here's the funny thing though. It's like in the 4, 5, and 6 in the original, like you never actually get to see his face. He's always had a mask on. He's
Right.
never taken it off. When you see him in 1, 2, and 3. Now, granted, it was Jango Fett at first, and then Boba became his father in a sense, and then basically now you have him in the Book of Boba Fett and then Mandalorian as well when he came back because it was the same actor who played Jango and so forth, whatever.
Right,
But the point is that when you look at that character now, he has his mask off, and that that's Boba because you've seen him already in the
Yes.
previous. Now everyone's like, oh, okay, now I can see who Boba is, and I can relate to him. But you're right. If he never took off his mask, just like in the Mandalorian, because God forbid, we got to make sure we can take off mask from time to time, whatever, because that's what a freaking theme is going on with a lot of TV shows lately.
Oh, don't get me started with Halo, but
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that.
yeah.
That to me is like that. I agree. If they kept it, if they just didn't do anything with him and never showed his face, I think they would have had that mysterious kind of vibe, and it would have made him more popular.
I think how they did it though was good because you have him in the Mandalorian and you have him in this show, and what he's really trying to do, just kind of to start out, like he doesn't have his armor,
Right? Because
and that's what he's trying to get, and the show does a really good job of, explaining like how he actually gets out of the Sarlacc pit, which is canon.
that is true. That is canon per the movies. Yes.
And it does a really great job of explaining how he gets out, what happened to the armor, and him getting the armor back, which is a really epic moment. What the show doesn't do though is it really doesn't do his character any justice as far as being who Boba Fett is. It really kind of subdues him as the character of the bounty hunter.
And I'm assuming it kind of makes him more passive aggressive. It doesn't really make him like his
Yeah,
badass kind of self that he's been this whole
very,
entire
very
time.
passive aggressive. Is it a good show? Yes, it is a good show. And I think when we look at these categories, let me go back there. When we look at the categories for Star Wars, there's not a lot of content, but
No,
what
I
there
agree.
is quality.
Yes, and like I said, now when you look at Obi-Wan and Ahsoka and all that, you're getting those characters that especially Obi-Wan, because you're curious to know what happened.
I loved Obi-Wan. I think that
Right.
was.
I think it's a great TV show.
I think that was their best as far as like what they've done, and you can say like, well, they don't have a lot of content like Marvel does, and I think that's only because like they want to take their time with these projects, and they want to make sure what they're putting forth is the best that they can put forth.
Right. I mean, when you looked at Ahsoka, right, and you saw the character, you built it up. Now I agree that if you're just watching Ahsoka for the first time, like I did, and I never watched really the Clone Wars, Rebels, and all that other stuff in between, there's definitely some things you're gonna not know what's going
Right.
on for sure. But
Yeah.
I think if you were just to watch it and not have any idea, I think storytelling. I mean, yeah, of course, it's going to help kind of fill in the blanks a little bit, but I think just doing it by itself, I think it does a really great job of explaining, all of what is going on. Like Thrawn, I mean, we've talked about it. Thrawn, we already know in Star Wars wise, he's going to be a big, big character. Hopefully that is the goal of what they're trying to, put forward, especially the Acolyte. Apparently, right?
Yeah,
This is all random news, but we don't know.
Each show has its moments where it's not, it's not the very best. Like when you first see Thrawn, like, granted the face is great, like the entrance is great, but it's like you kind of see him like have this pot belly, and it's really weird when you watch the show because I was more expecting him to be kind of more of an in shape kind of dude, and he kind of just has like a dad bod, and it's like it's kind of weird, I guess, but
I
like
mean, and we talked. I mean, you and I talked about the review on Ahsoka, and we talked about all that
yeah,
different
yeah.
stuff, including all that stuff. But like, I
But for me, I think Star Wars does have more quality than quantity. And will they get the quantity? Sure. But I think they're not just going to pump out shows left and right.
I
They're going to
think
work on one at a time.
I think the one thing that they need to start doing is, when they kind of need to take that same approach with Marvel is, build the characters, right? Build their backstories, kind of build that realm, right? And I know that they want to keep doing animated stuff, but like really push the limit and kind of go into that live action more because I know more people are going to want to watch it. Like what is really there in the real time because they want to know, like, again with Marvel the way they did, the very first Iron Man all the way to Endgame. We've talked about this. Like that is the people, like that's all these moments all
Yeah,
together.
I
Like
just
that's what
think
they need to do.
with Star Wars, their timeline isn't so tight where they're looking like, okay, well, we're doing phase,
No, I'm not talking
4,
about
5, and
phases.
6, and then we're
No,
doing 7 by 2028.
no,
It's
I'm
like,
not
no, no.
saying that. But
I
I'm saying
think
is they've already built
they're
their timeline.
with 3 seasons of Mandalorian and then Book of Boba Fett, we have Ahsoka. Ahsoka's been pretty much in all of them, I think, except for maybe Book of Boba Fett. I don't
Yeah,
think
I
she
think
was in that
yeah,
one, but
I know she was in Mando for like one
um,
episode, but
but you have these you have these characters in these shows that are again, they're intermingling. They're all interconnected, and eventually, like you will get a Mandalorian movie.
right. But that's what I mean though, is like is getting that, you building the characters, you're doing all this, and then building, like I said, the movies to then again still come back to the TV shows. So it like
And
again,
I
it's
think
all
this is
connected.
exactly where Marvel started, except they're doing it with TV shows into movies,
Oh
where
yeah,
Marvel
right.
did movies into TV
Shows,
shows, and
right.
that's where Marvel started kind of going downhill. But we'll get that.
We'll get to that in a point, but
But
yeah.
yeah, I think Star Wars definitely is quality over quantity. Now, consistency, that's where I think Star Wars has that consistency because when we go to Marvel, you'll see the consistency between the Marvel shows is wacky. It's all over the place. And the third category that we marked was relatable to the movies. And yes, Mandalorian, so like those.
They just kind of fill in blank spots. They don't really tell the story of like the movies because that's not really what they're meant to do.
Right. Obi-Wan did,
I
obviously, because
mean,
that kind
yeah.
of fills in a gap there. And some of obviously Clone Wars does and Rebels does a little bit, fills in those gaps. But yeah, I mean, that's where you can relate to the movies because it might not be the whole entire show. It
Right.
might just be that one tiny Easter egg that they put in there that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, and especially like the newer, like I haven't even seen it yet, which I know it's going to come out on Disney at some point, and I know we're going to talk about Marvel in a second. But like the new, let's say the new Marvels movie, right? And they did that really. I think at the very end, I didn't really get to see it, but I know it has something to do with the X-Men, right? It has something to do with that. But like
Right.
the
Yep.
point is
With
like
Beast.
with Beast, right? But like what I'm
Yeah.
saying is like now, going back to Star Wars is like if Mando and all these other shows, I mean, they have done a little bit of Easter eggs, a little bit here and there, but not as much as what Marvel has done, of course, in the past and everything else. But Star Wars could potentially, in the future when they start building, the TV shows. Let's say do another season of Mando, and then they make a movie about him, and then they're like, oh, let's throw in an Easter egg right before, so that way, you kind of get that idea implanted, so that way when you watch the movie, you're like, oh, wait, I know this, and you kind of get that,
Yeah.
picture in between. But that's
Well,
what
and I
they
think
could
the
do.
next season of Mando is probably going to be that movie. But I mean,
Yeah, true.
I think that that's kind of where that consistency and the relatable to the movies, like we'll go back and forth with Star Wars, where they might now do a movie, and then when another show comes around, you might see something that directly happened from that movie. Which again, this is where Marvel started with.
Right. I mean, and why don't we jump into Marvel, since I know we got a lot more to talk about with Marvel here.
We definitely do.
So starting off with, the ABC stuff. So like this was the stuff that was like right in between like the very first Avengers and stuff like that. So it was kind of like that weird kind of awkward phase that, now granted ABC has
Yeah.
been with Disney for so long, but the three shows here are Agents of Shield, Agent Carter, and Inhumans. So the two that I'll talk about are the first two. The last one I don't even want to bother talking about, because that was you'll notice that there will be some shows that were considered Hulu related. Every Hulu related show that Disney decided to do was shit. It was not. It wasn't even worth your time. So Inhumans was, unfortunately, the one ironic piece of that, though, I will say, is the guy who played Black Bolt was in the movie for sorry, it was Multiverse of Madness, right? So he was in Doctor Strange. That same character that played him was in that movie. But other than that, I mean, there's no relation. There was no anything. I just think it's funny because this could have been a great TV show if they had better, direction and, production or whatever. They could have had a better script. They could probably have so many other things, but I think they could have done a lot more with the Hulu TV shows if they did it directly with, the Disney, productions. Like they would have done it a lot better. I just don't think they would have done it anywhere near.
And FYI, all three of these shows are not connected to the MCU.
Hold on. So, correct. I mean, in some ways, I would say Agent Carter kind of, in the first two seasons, I do remember, like, it does kind of give more of a backstory on what she was doing during the time of when Steve Rogers
that
was
one
gone.
show, yes, like background of what she was doing.
Well, especially Jarvis. I mean, then you realize that Jarvis was actually he was a butler. He was their butler. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the beginning, actually, in their degree, was related to the movies.
That one started, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
This was a bizarre TV show, just so you know.
It's like Heroes, right?
Exactly.
It started really, really well, and then you watch the show, then a movie comes out, and the show changes with the movie, and you're like, hey, this is pretty awesome. Like they're directly impacted by the movie, and then the show goes on, another movie happens, slightly less impacted by the movie. The show goes on, another movie comes. Nothing.
Well, then on top of that, they also brought in random superheroes. Like, who was it, Matt?
I don't remember. The show was on so long ago.
Man, you're losing your touch here. I was saying Ghost Rider, right? So, like, granted, it was the new version of Ghost Rider.
Oh yeah.
But like, they brought him in, but it had nothing to do with the MCU. Now, granted, I'm hoping that at some point they'll bring in Ghost Rider and actually do something with, the Midnight Suns and so on and so forth. But that's another conversation.
I have. Just a little side thing. I have no idea how or why Nicolas Cage is suddenly so popular as Ghost Rider.
I mean, because it's funny, because of course, when you look back at the day when Ghost Rider came out, of course, he played, the
right, and
movies,
everyone was like, "Oh, this is such a horrible
but then all of a sudden now everyone's
and all of a sudden "Oh, we need Nicolas Cage back." It's like,
okay,
you didn't like him before.
Well, hold on, no, hold on. So if that's the case, then why don't we bring Wesley Snipes back as Blade?
You mean like the 80-year-old Wesley Snipes now?
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, right? Because that would be the same idea, right? Instead of having, I can't remember the guy's name that's doing it now, but like, my point is like, if you're going to make a guy, play a character that he played so long ago, is it really even worth it? You know what I mean? Like, now granted, unfortunately, like with General, Ross, right? Or really like Secretary of State Ross, whatever you want to call him now, like, the actor actually died, and of course Harrison Ford is now taking over and kind of doing that thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much you can, do with that. But like, I don't want to have like Wesley Snipes or have Nicolas Cage come back and be like, "All right, guys, I'm Ghost Rider."
Nicolas Cage isn't obviously like he's not like 75 either.
No, but what I'm saying is like he shouldn't be playing that role. I think if anything, if he was to play a role, see, I don't even think it would have been him. I think Sam Elliott really did a good job with that, like, old man kind of Ghost Rider from like back in the cowboy days kind of a deal.
I think you need somebody who's obviously younger, but somebody who like can
was willing to play the role for a while too. That's the big thing.
Who's willing to play the role, but has that like kind of rage, like.
So having that Nicolas Cage kind of effect of like, okay, I need to have that rage and that same ability, but need to have it in a different way.
Not Nicolas Cage in the way that he acts.
So the thing is, though, is that do we do Robbie Reyes, which is now the new Ghost Rider in the current comic books, which that's where I feel like a lot of where Marvel's going to really choose from, but they're not going to go with old school characters anymore. The original, like, kind of stories.
I have an idea.
What's that? Chat GPT there, bud?
Female.
Oh, right. Female what? What is
female Ghost Rider?
Okay, hold on. Female. What? We got to have some kind of race or some kind of
Well,
something.
We just had an Indian character, so we can't go there.
Okay. Yep. Okay. What else? What else can we think? But how about Bangladesh?
I was gonna say Pakistani.
Pakistani. Okay, so a Pakistani Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, would you like a Slurpee, please?
All right. Don't be racist now. That's going on a different path. But what I was.
Anyways, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like, it started well, and then somehow they went back in time. They went to outer space, and it just got it got really weird.
With Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., though, I did it. I would say the first few seasons, I think basically once they started with Ghost Rider and kind of like ending that, I think it was fine. But then I think the weirdest thing was when they went into outer space and they just started going at it, and they weren't even in the same planet anymore. They were like in another galaxy, solar system, whatever. And I'm like, what is the point of this TV show? Like at this point, it's just a filler, But anyways,
I mean, it was a good show for what it was, but like, yes, Agent Carter, you technically could say it's. I would say maybe more indirectly connected to the MCU because it's not like you could say more of a like. She doesn't impact but
it kind of gives you more of that background story of like her character and some of the I'm trying to remember what they're called. It was Cap's basically buddies that he was with, during World War II. It was but anyways, it's not.
You question whether or not the ABC shows are canon to the MCU or if they're not canon because they're ABC. Like that's really where. I personally didn't mark it as consistent because there's that question.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that those two were probably the only, like, out of their ABC stuff, like that.
Yeah, those two are,
the only two that can somewhat be related. But anyways, the Netflix Disney controversy, right? So back a little while ago, this was probably 10 years ago. I can't even remember, or however long ago, Netflix decided to make certain series of superheroes. So one would be Daredevil. There was a couple more like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, The Defenders, and The Punisher. So all of these characters, okay, great. I would say majority of them are great. There were definitely a couple that I was like, you're right, I don't really care for this anymore. But
that'd be Iron Fist and Jessica Jones.
Yes. But like you look at Daredevil, you look at The Punisher, and I even say the Defenders as a whole. So the Defenders are really all of them. So it was Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. Punisher kind of shows up somewhat, but like really, it's really those four that show up and they do it together. But it was nice that, Netflix, these characters, like the actors wise, they did a really good job on really casting these people. Like, so Charlie Cox, who played Daredevil, thank God that Disney was like, we're going to bring this guy back, because if they didn't, you want to talk about an uproar? Like, there's not many people you'd want to have, bring back onto a series like this.
I would have voted for Ben Affleck.
Really? All leather? Yeah, I don't even want to go there. But like, so I would
say, joking,
say,
obviously.
So put the Punisher, right? So John Bernthal. So he was also on The Walking Dead. If you ever seen it, season 1, he was one of the main characters in the beginning. But
I love, like, the one thing there's a love-hate relationship I have with the show.
Which one? The Punisher?
The Punisher.
And what is that?
I love the character, and I love how gritty it is, because I love when there's like, John Wick is one of these things. When there's whether it's a movie or a TV show where people actually fight and they actually have injuries that are visible, like as they fight, like I love that. And this one was gritty like that, where
oh yeah, especially the prison scene, man.
He got his ass kicked.
That prison scene, that was bad. I remember that, and he got his ass whooped.
Yeah, he got his ass kicked. The hate that I have for the show is right when it got canceled, the very last episode, within the last 30 seconds, is when we see him in the perfect Punisher outfit. He is 100% the Punisher. Canceled.
Okay, but here's the thing, Matt. I mean, you can say that about.
It went 2 seasons. That's what we were waiting
Right.
for the whole
But
time.
the problem is okay, when you look at Daredevil and you look at some of the other shows, it's like they did the same thing. I mean, you get to a point and then it's just like, oh, right, cliffhanger. What do you do now? So like I was glad that they, especially with Daredevil, like they brought Charlie Cox back. They brought a newer suit. Technically, we haven't seen it yet because we'll be talking about it. It's called Daredevil.
That red and
Born
yellow
Again.
one needs to.
No, that one needs to go. That one's a shitty one. But like his original outfit that he had in the Netflix show, spot on. Like I think it was
good. Yeah, it
amazing.
was good.
It was a great, costume. It was a great,
And I thought,
persona.
I mean, Luke Cage for what it was, I thought it was good. Like I
Yeah.
thought it was a good show.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, outside of Charlie Cox and maybe Punisher, not MCU.
True. It was non-MCU at the time, and it was ironic because Netflix and Disney have had a feud over the years because they've had some controversial stuff because they've had Marvel movies on Netflix and so on and so forth. But
Right.
when Disney was like, hey, we need to stop the partnership, and that's basically what they did. And so of course Netflix is like, oh, that's cool. Let's team up with Nickelodeon, and really go against the competitor. So they were just like, screw you guys, and so it was just interesting. But
Yeah.
basically Netflix was like, all right, let's just partner up with Nickelodeon, and Hulu was like, let's partner up with Disney, and then here we are, and now here,
Yeah,
they
and
got
now
some
it's
stuff going.
with Echo.
Yes,
The real question is, obviously we know Daredevil is official, like MCU, like we know that. The real question is the rest of the Netflix characters going to be canon as well? That's really
I'd be so.
the Punisher is definitely there, but
Yeah.
Iron Fist in the show actually does give his powers to somebody else. Like
He does, yes.
and yes, it is a female.
Shocking.
Shocking.
No,
But he does give his abilities to somebody else. I could go without having an Iron Fist, and I could go for totally, I don't want to say rebooting, but I could see them redoing the character
what I could see is, because
and then just not doing Jessica Jones.
well, that's true. What I was going to say is if you brought Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and the Punisher, right, and you bring Jessica Jones if you want to, it's not really a big deal. It's not really going to hurt anyone's feelings. But like if you did a series on the Defenders, right, and you actually built some of those characters, like again, do what they did, before, build the characters up again,
Yeah.
And then maybe do a Defender series, but make it longer, because then they can intertwine a little bit. I don't know. That's just something down the road they could do because, like, again, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, they were, I think it was called Heroes for Hire. It was their tag team duo name, but they were very popular, and they've also been in a lot of, like, if you look at comic books, they're actually very important when it comes to like the Civil War, and there was so many characters. I'm telling you, these two were important in that, kind of lineup and everything else. But
Yeah, I mean Luke Cage is a pretty popular character as far as like some of the Marvel teams goes. Like he was pivotal in a lot of the teams.
But again, it's just it's crappy that they, because they've already done all what they did. Well, I mean, Matt and I did talk about a little while ago that Marvel, because of the whole Jonathan Majors, ordeal, they could potentially do a soft boot in the regards of could we restart certain things. I would laugh if they took that theory and they brought some of these other characters back in, and they could bring some of these characters and bring them into the limelight and maybe do a soft reboot that way.
I would not be surprised that in Daredevil you see the Punisher.
No,
I would 100%. I mean, I wouldn't say guarantee, but I would probably at least 80 to 90% would suggest that at least the Punisher would be seen in that show.
No, absolutely. I mean, the others, it would be a very hard call.
Yeah,
but
I don't think that you would see Luke Cage, but you might see Luke Cage and maybe something else. I mean,
I could see it more down the road.
whether or not the rest of them are going to be included, I don't know, but
I think it's going to be more later on. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
But right now we have ABC and we have Netflix.
Right. So this is where we start getting into, like I said, the Hulu shows.
When we start going,
So ABC, granted, I know Inhumans, I'm going to loop Inhumans back into this again because the young adult series, the Runaways, the Cloak and Dagger, the Inhumans, those were all technically on Hulu because they were all on there. They were basically produced, or they were produced by Hulu and stuff like that. I never watched any of these shows, and I can tell
which
you.
is still technically Disney because Hulu is.
No, I know it's
yeah.
technically, but the thing is Hulu went their own direction with it, which was the worst mistake they could have done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's both Cloak and Dagger and Runaways. Again, I hate to be a broken record on this. Not canon, not MCU.
Well, and that so the Runaways I know is like it has nothing to do with anything and nothing to do with the MCU whatsoever. I can tell you that. At least I could say Cloak and Dagger, if they were to do like super like a newer superhero team or something down the road, they could definitely introduce those two in a different limelight. But the Runaways, I don't even think
No.
anything.
The Runaways, the Runaways was terrible. I mean, Cloak and Dagger for what it was. I mean, if you're a young adult and we're watching it, I guess it would be interesting enough. But like the characters themselves in the comic books were awesome.
Oh yeah, no, but that's what I mean. Like they did do certain things with certain superheroes and stuff.
In the
like
show,
that.
they were sissies.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like when we talk about how
really subdued and really just like
well, so the one thing that I'm going to mention, Matt, is like we talked about how all these directors, all these producers, writers, whatever, they have content. They have what's that thing called? Comics. They have actual stories that have been written. Do they take the time to look at them and maybe see if there's some way to fit it in?
They don't. No. And you know what's funny? They don't even have to use their imagination.
No, they
can just look at the comic book and go, we're going to apply this to a story and we're going to use our imagination to create a new story to put them in.
Right. And maybe, you can slightly change it here and there, but like you can still make it as close as you can, which is
then they come out with these two pieces of crap and
there's
somehow like, oh yeah, these kids will be, it'll be relatable. And I'd be seriously doubting these shows went longer than 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think they. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they
Cloak
did.
and Dagger, but
they didn't really. I can tell you they didn't last long. They didn't really last long, is from what I remember. But moving into
so that's 3 networks: Hulu, yes. Well, Hulu, ABC, and Netflix.
So the last one, right? So this is the main core. This is MCU. This is what we know of, actual MCU related shows, right? So we got WandaVision, The Falcon and Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, Secret Invasion, Loki, What If, Echo.
That's season 1 and season 2.
Yes, season 1. Yes, that's true. I'm not going to mention the other yet, only because we're going to talk about these ones real quick because there's quite a few here. So WandaVision, right? So this was the technically first TV show from the MCU that they released that they were going to be like, all right, let's do. They wanted to do one show, and this was the one that they wanted to do. I will admit that this show, out of most of these, are, I would say, at least in the top 5 so far of shows that they've created that were actually decent.
I can tell you the first 3 episodes were boring as hell.
Okay, listen, I will admit that it is a little weird that they decided to go with like, so if you haven't seen it, too bad, it's already spoiled, whatever. But the point is, when you start to watch the TV show, it starts to go into like, there's one episode based on the Brady Bunch. There's another one based on like Leave It to Beaver. There's another one based on whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't really pick up until maybe like midway through, and then you're like, okay,
then you start to know what exactly is going on,
right?
Because you're not understanding why all of a sudden you go from like the Brady Bunch kind of theme show to like Leave It to Beaver, and then you go into like another realm of TV, and it's like, wait, what am I doing right now? But then it starts to make more sense. But like that TV show, I think what it really did was just kind of fill in the blank for what happened with Wanda after she left, Endgame in a sense, because again, we find out that Vision, of course, is dead because again,
right,
he pulls out, the what's it called, Matt? I'm trying to remember the
Mind Stone.
The Mind Stone, yes. Yeah. So pulls it out, right? So, I mean, granted, she wasn't. Oops, sorry, guys. She wasn't there for Endgame related, stuff going forward, but like, that's where, people are like, okay, well, where did she go right after Infinity War? Because again, all, 5 years of that, it's like, well, where the hell is everybody else? Well, this is what she was doing during that time, when people
Well,
were
I
doing
think,
that
I
stuff.
mean, obviously, WandaVision really feeds into, Doctor Strange too, because
Yeah.
that's really like kind of where that that sets it up. But you look at each of these shows, and you're really trying to what they're trying to set up, and we put obviously Loki's a little bit lower on the list, but Loki happened kind of earlier on, and that really
Yeah.
did set up what the whole theme of this
Yeah.
was, which was the multiverse.
Right. And it kind of leads you into, kind of the other shows because, like, Loki's, first season was definitely a great job of, kind of telling what happened with Loki in that one scene of Endgame, kind of gets you into that. We don't really need to go into full details with a lot of these TV shows, but like, with What If, I know both Matt and I talked about this a little bit before, but, What If it's an interesting idea that I'm glad that they decided to do.
The single
Especially,
best episode of
I know
this
it's
whole
zombies. You're
series
gonna
is
say.
the zombie one.
I understand that. I
Yeah.
understand that there's different episodes that, yes, it's a different concept. Like, what if, you know, Iron Man decided to, go to Sakaar and become, it's that basically it'd be like switching places with the Hulk
Right.
when he goes to Sakaar and things like that. So like it was a different concept and it was great in that sense. But like,
And they're all like, they're all multiverse stories. They're not like, if the Tony Stark from the MCU that we see, in all the movies went to Sakaar. It's a different Tony Stark from a different Earth, a different multiverse Earth.
right. And so like it's a great concept. It's a great TV show as a whole. But like I understand that yes, not every episode needs like there's a reason why some of these ideas never really happened is because of
Right.
I mean that's why it was great for a TV show in that sense. But like
She-Hulk, I did not enjoy. And
I thought your favorite was Megan the Stallion, my friend.
I can, I mean, I can be honest, and I think Loki was probably number one for me of this list.
Okay.
WandaVision's probably second, at least I would say second.
I would say second.
The ones that I'm probably not a huge fan of, obviously She-Hulk is on that list. Miss Marvel, I wasn't a huge fan of.
Yeah, I didn't. No, I can agree with you. That wasn't really my favorite either.
Even though I don't know a lot about Moon Knight, I watched the show and I still don't know a lot about Moon Knight.
No, but I will say that Moon Knight was kind of, and this is where if you guys haven't,
I do think his performance was awesome on the show.
I think it was amazing, but I think the way they did it and the fact that they're only planning on what we were understanding is they were only going to do this one thing with him and that was it, like the one season, and it's like. It's dumb. So why would you introduce a character, only do one season of it, and leave a huge cliffhanger at the very end, and then be like, "All right, we're done."
Obviously, I mean, yes, if we see him in more things, then that would be great. And this is the core problem of all of these shows. And yes, there is a lot of them, and that's the core problem. Is there's a lot of content.
Right, and like so, I'll mention like two more real quick. So like Secret Invasion. Right. So like this was just kind of like explaining what was going on, with Nick Fury at the time, like where the hell was he at? Like what was going on with him, blah, blah, blah. He's in a friggin' ship in outer space and he finally comes down to Earth and has no like he wasn't a part of Endgame. He wasn't a part of nothing. So basically the guy that it was Talos, sorry. Talos was the one that disappeared.
Right.
But Nick was already up there, so he basically was just kind of chilling. So like it kind of explains a weird story.
And now if Secret Invasion is MCU and it's canon, which right. I'm assuming it is because it's a Disney Marvel show.
That basically
there now exists a being from the show that has every single ability of every single Marvel person.
Yeah. Which sucks because now there's more of a threat. But like another big one that him and I have talked about that we have not seen any movement at all. We've only seen him in this show, and that's in there hasn't been any movement at all. Is the Falcon and Winter Soldier,
right?
Because that was I mean, at first we thought at first I was like, man, this is actually not a bad TV show. I was like, okay, kind of explains a little bit more, but like. When now you're only seeing them and now you see Falcon turn into the, Captain America.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing him basically become his true, right, and his true potential. then what was the point of, only doing that one season and then basically now waiting until what apparently is now 2025, not this year, that they're going to come out with Brave New World, regarding the whole Hulk. And so, like, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you wait that long to then finally do something about
There's
it?
not a lot of consistency.
I would have
and
just waited.
that they're putting out a lot of content, and you kind of question, like, where does She-Hulk fit in all this?
No, you're not going to fit it anywhere.
There was just an article where the actress that played, not the She-Hulk character, but the the lady in the show.
Oh, oh, you mean the actress that played She-Hulk?
Yeah. She was saying, like, that Disney is not going to probably authorize a season 2 because they were over budget on the first season.
Oh, you don't say.
I believe they were only supposed to spend like 85 million on the show.
Let me guess, they spent like 150 or more.
They spent 222 million to make the show.
Wow. Wonder how much they paid Maggie the Stallion just to twerk for fucking 2 minutes.
So
that's just me.
Basically, if they tried to do a season 2, they basically aren't going to greenlight it because they went way over budget for the first season. So it's like, and then you look at the first season and it was terrible. I mean,
well, a lot of that show was just really guest stars. Like, it was literally, it wasn't, I mean, it kind of did some character development here and there, but it wasn't enough to like get you to really be involved with She-Hulk. Like, I would say in the first couple episodes when she was building herself and like kind of, building her character, that was okay. After that, and once they started showing more like, hey, here's Wong, or hey, here's, Abominable.
I would have liked to actually
Abomination,
see like an actual story, like her. I understand like the silliness, and I understand the direction that they were kind of going in with the comedy of it. But I would have actually liked it to be more of like that WandaVision and the Hawkeye, like,
right, to build a story. You need to
build a story,
content.
have her have the conflict without the twerking and without the stupid ridiculousness of what it was, and then to do the poor CGI at the end with Hulk and Scar or whatever his name is.
Scar, but like, I agree. The thing is like they never should have done that, especially with that. Like, it was weird enough that they also brought in Charlie Cox, to play Daredevil a little bit with that when we talked about that red and yellow costume. But like, when you bring in Hulk and he's like, "Oh, hey guys, here's my son Scar," and you're like now Matt and I, or basically any Marvel nerd, comic book, whatever guru, is gonna basically be like, "Why the hell is he here?" Right? Because like literally,
why does he look like that? Like,
right? Because we've already talked about
he
this.
should be ripping that table in half.
Literally, he shouldn't even be speaking normal English.
Yeah.
Like, and he looks like an emo kid. He should be basically like a Neanderthal.
This is my son Scar. Hey guys, how's it going?
Well, you know what I mean? And he sounds, and I'm gonna say, he sounds like a pussy. Like, he doesn't even sound like he's like angry and he's ready to go. But like, that's not the Scar we know. But like, that's the thing about a lot of these TV shows is like they just throw in characters, and you're like, what are you doing? And why are you going
and
back?
And a lot of these shows, like, that's kind of like, you look at Hawkeye.
Oh yeah.
Like, that show really was a vehicle for the character of Hawkeye to kind of pass on the reins.
Right. And now that's why Kate Bishop, as you can tell. Now, if you, for example, I know this is kind of like going into games here, but like, if you play Marvel's Avengers, Kate Bishop is a playable character that you can play, which ironically enough, kind of, I'm not saying it kind of follows along with it, but it kind of gives you that kind of gateway. You can kind of relate. And that's kind of what it reminds me of like looking at that game. But like,
I mean, Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of did that same thing with Sam.
Well, I mean, and then if you look at, for example, I know this, we're going to talk about a movie here, but like, that's why you look at Black Widow, the movie, when it came out, like, that's kind of what happened with Yelena. Like, that's all it did. It was like, okay, hey, guess what? Black Widow's dead. We know that. But now Yelena's like, oh, hey, I'm the new Black Widow. And you're like, oh, well, cool.
And I'll tell you, with Disney doing this new Spotlight, which is, I think, the way that I've looked at it, and I could be wrong, it's sort of like the DC Elseworlds. That's the way that I'm looking at it, because Echo falls into that, the Marvel Spotlight.
Oh, wonderful.
And Echo actually did one thing that none of these other shows actually have done, where it actually linked to another show.
Oh, and
Because the very first episode was basically Hawkeye.
okay, okay. I see what you're doing there.
So I mean, you're looking at like, that first episode linked back to another show, and it brought, you get to see Ronan and that whole basically what happened in Hawkeye.
No, I mean that's good. I'm glad that they did that. But again, now it's just more. Echo is just more of a
It's a spotlight.
right. It
Which,
was a linking show to just build upon.
from what I
another show.
understand, Daredevil is supposed to be under that Marvel spotlight.
Right. Even though this is Daredevil, the new show,
Which that werewolf
is another
movie
spotlight.
is that spotlight.
But so the thing about the Daredevil TV show is this is the only TV show that is actually guaranteed, from what we're understanding, like more than 20. It's like 22 episodes, I think. It's the only TV show that I know that any Marvel shows so far has never. They've even gone past 10.
Yeah,
They barely do 6 or 7. So it's like
that's most of the shows now. I mean, and you look
8
at
is usually what I see, but yeah.
you look at the production of them. I mean, most major network shows are not spending 85 million on an episode or the
No.
TV show in general. You know what I mean? So
No, but what I'm saying is like a typical TV show really is like 10 to 12 episodes.
yeah,
That's per season. That's usually
and
the first season.
so we listed all these, and granted, a couple of these I feel like are probably going to be animated.
Well, I can tell you Marvel Zombies, yes, that's going to be animated. I can tell you Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is another animated one.
But Agatha, Darkhold Diaries, Eyes of Wakanda, Ironheart, and then, as we said, Daredevil, Born Again.
I would say those are the live action. I'm not going to.
None of these have a date that they're coming out as of yet, but those are all the shows that are probably coming out either this year or next year, or the year after that. Who knows?
But so going on to the pros and the cons, or the goods or the bads, depending on which way you want it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we said, Star Wars, I feel like has not pushed out content like Marvel. Marvel's pushed out content despite it being completely finished.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like there's with Marvel, it's like, and I agree. So this is where Marvel needs to kind of take a playbook page from Star Wars again. It is because you're looking at how Marvel's like, hey, yep, we're gonna make all this content. That's great. I would love to see more than 5 episodes for a freaking season. Okay, I want to see like an actual let's say 10. I want to see 10, and I want to see a good amount of it. And then if I have to wait so long for it, I would rather wait for it. And so like Marvel's not doing that. They're like, oh, let me just pull out 5 episodes out of my ass real quick. Let me just shove it down your throat, and hopefully maybe it'll stick.
And I think that you're talking about everybody, people have superhero fatigue, and you wonder why we have superhero fatigue. It's because you're putting out 5 shows a year, 3, 4 movies a year, when you could you could take a page out of Star Wars book and go, hey, we're going to put this show out when we put it out, but we're going to make sure one,
quality.
our story is good, and how we're doing it is top notch. Who we have in place is top notch,
right? And it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's the difference, I think, with Marvel. Granted, with everything coming under Disney, you're not seeing the ABC Marvel shows anymore.
Oh no.
You might see them on Hulu because, Disney has controlling share of Hulu, but you're only probably going to see them on Disney and Hulu because when they stream on Disney, they stream on Hulu too.
No, but the good thing is like, for example, I know they made a deal with Sony, so this is another big thing, right? So of course there are still characters that Marvel has not been able to acquire. So like, for example, Hulk, right? So Hulk has been, unless Universal is just, I'm telling you, what Disney could do is just buy Universal and just big old slap you in the face and then just be like, give me back the Hulk. And then, but again, the problem is now it's like you've already done your series, you've already done all that. But like
there were rumors of them selling their shares to Universal for some of these properties, but I doubt that Universal is willing to. who they could stand to lose Hulu and gain some of these properties. And
If Universal really wants Hulu, then I'd say go for it. I mean, at this point, but that's just me. But like, going on to like the Sony thing, it's like, Sony. The only thing that Sony, yes, like you look at the Spider Verse. Okay, I like to because that's really what they're doing. They're building their own universe related to Spider Man. That is the only thing they have going for them in that regard. If Sony is smart enough, okay, and I say this, and this is where I think it's kind of funny because it's kind of like a video game reference too, right? So when you look at Xbox with Microsoft, right? So technically, Sony does not have enough money like Microsoft does, where they can, they can do whatever the hell they want on Xbox, and they can because Microsoft owns them and so forth. Imagine if Disney, now this is just me, if Disney bought PlayStation, okay, this is where I know I'm gonna throw this out here. They could have the backing for a lot of shit. Okay, now think about this. If Disney bought PlayStation, PlayStation has their own, as you know, the PlayStation Studios and so forth, and all that stuff, right? So they already have made Last of Us. They've already done all that. They've even talked about. I think they were trying to do like a Kratos series, and they're thinking of other things. Imagine what they could do with that. I'm just saying that's a
sure.
ballpark out there, but I'm just saying that's the kind of things
But
I
would
could
we
see.
really want Disney to do that?
I mean, well, okay, hold on. You know what? You know what? I'll tell you this. This is what I'll say. If they can prove to us that they can do a really good Deadpool in the third one, okay? If they can prove to us that they can keep the original character and keep everything the way that it is and so on and so forth and make people realize that as long as you're not changing the character and doing the Disney-fied way of things, if they can do that, I would not be surprised if they could do other things that could be related in the PlayStation world. I'm just saying, because Kratos,
Yeah.
right? I mean, to me, oh my God, I'd love to see that, man. But that's just me.
So yeah, I mean, going back to obviously, we beat it kind of with a dead horse here,
Oh,
but
sorry.
quantity over quality, like with the multiple shows, multiple networks, splitting resources. Marvel unfortunately gets the mark in quantity and not quality, and that's
Yeah.
is it a bad thing? No, because there's a lot of content that people can enjoy if they want to enjoy it.
Right. I
And
mean,
that's where Star Wars lacks. They don't lack the content to watch.
right. I mean, and that's where, when you start looking at Marvel, it's like the one thing that yes, they also have done well with is the movies part where again, Star Wars has only again had you've had the saga, you've had the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 7, 8, 9, and then you've had your like little movies in between and so on and so forth, but they haven't had enough time, granted because of the quality, right? Because we're basing it off this. Now, granted, if we're really going to talk about the movies here for a second in Star Wars, I'd really would just say watch the first 6. The last 3, you could probably throw it away and you could probably restart and go forward with something else.
Some people like myself actually think they're decent, but
Depending on which one you're talking about, I would say the 7th one is fine. The last 2, I could probably give 2 shits for, but that's just me.
But I mean, when we're talking, the TV shows between the two franchises, I mean, you look at Star Wars and you look at like the writers, the directors, the producers. Marvel, maybe now under that Disney umbrella, they're a lot closer to being under that Disney umbrella. So the writers and the directors and the producers are all kind of the same people. But
Right.
when they first started making a lot of these shows, you have ABC, you got Netflix, you got Disney, you have people from Hulu, and they're coming back and forth and making all these random ass stories.
No, I mean I agree. Like I said, they're not. It's not really interconnected as it should have been because they could have just kept it under one, and then maybe could have built a story based on certain characters, and they could have made it more collaborative and made it more sense. Like actually
Yeah.
could tell a real
And
story.
Granted, Star Wars, you can make the same argument. Like George Lucas held it with a very firm grasp until he, obviously gave it to Disney.
You mean I was going to say sellout, but I'm kidding.
But with Dave Filoni, now he has a much bigger position with Star Wars. Now he's like basically like the creative director of all Star Wars projects.
Well, I mean,
So
that's good that
he's
he's, as long as he's working with George Lucas, because that's the really big thing. I
I don't
mean,
think George Lucas really has anything to do with Star Wars anymore,
well,
though. But
no, but I mean, I feel like if Dave and him kind of talk, you know what I mean, and still kind of get some ideas and things like that. I mean, you know what I mean? They could still have that productive flow going, and especially in those movies.
I'm pretty sure Dave Filoni has the George Lucas mindset already. I mean, he's already pretty much. I mean, Dave Filoni did Clone Wars and Rebels, so I mean,
Right? No, I'm just saying. I mean, as long as if they're good with
they
it,
I think they've just more carefully chosen like who their writers are, who's the directors. I mean, Jon Favreau's been part of Star Wars.
and no, I mean, granted, it's funny how he plays Hogan or Happy literally in
Yeah.
Marvel. So it's interesting how he's been in both now, and it's like he's a director in Mando, and he's what did he do Ahsoka too?
I don't think he was. He might have been part of Ahsoka, but
But what my point is though is like he's done a lot with that, so I'm glad that they're they're
yeah.
sticking with that theme. But I mean, I think I'm going to say this, Matt. When it comes to really both sets of series and you know quality, quantity, amount of content, all this other stuff. I mean, I would say if you're looking for a series of TV shows that are relatable to the universe, but let's say if you wanted to only see it as a kind of like an outside entity and not so much like really interconnected as much. If you just wanted to see like shows like happening during the time of the movies, but not so much related, that have their own good quality and stuff like that. And again, there may not be a lot of it. Of course, I'm going to say Star Wars, right? But I feel like, yes, I know we've talked about this and we've already beaten it with a dead horse, but Marvel, because they had so many movies and they have now some interesting TV shows. I'm not saying all of them are great. Now they could have definitely worked on them and made them more quality
Right.
versus the quantity of it. If they really spent the time and made these TV shows the way they could have been really great. They could have easily been on par with Star Wars, and and Marvel could have easily had that advantage. But because of them wanting to make all these TV shows all at once, and then kind of like start having all these ideas and just like start popping them out, it really screwed them in the long run because now you're looking at it as like, okay, cool. I I really wish I could have seen Captain America or really, Falcon, when Brave New World was out. So then that I could have made it more relatable and a connection where waiting so many years after it came out and now watching the movie, it's like, okay, what the hell was
Yeah.
the point of watching it? Now with Loki, it kind of sucks because like you're only now just like, okay, well now it's a big cliffhanger. What are we going to do now? Could you use that in a, future project down the road that could help, maybe reboot kind of the story? Sure. But now that's just more of an Easter egg for later on. And you'll have to remember like, oh shit, what happened in Loki? Now I got to go rewatch it again, or do whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also that question of like, with Star Wars, if you're really into Star Wars, you could just be that person that's like, well, I only want to watch live action. I ain't gonna watch no stinking cartoon. Yeah, you're gonna be left with Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and those because if you're really gonna watch just those, you're you're missing out on a whole bunch of
Right.
canon
Yeah.
content from that are animated. And I get it, like those shows are geared towards kids, not adults.
Right. And I mean, and that's the thing where a lot of Marvel is
Marvel is adult, maybe in the early mid to late 80s, it was mainly animated.
no, right. No, I mean,
But,
yeah.
as of recently, like it's all mainly live action. So you can make that argument like, well, I'm going to go to Marvel because, at least their shows are.
Right, they're on there, but the thing is, it's like, again, you want to make sure that the quality is going to be just as worth it. So, again, do the ultimate debate. I mean, you can say either or has their own advantages, has their own cons, and whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, I mean,
Pretty even. I mean,
it is
for
yeah,
me, they're pretty even. I mean, they like. I think each one has their pros and cons, but they both they both fall in pretty evenly.
I mean, really, like their only differences, I would say, right? So, like I just said about Marvel, if Marvel spent more time on the shows and made it in a way where it made more sense and they could connect it a little bit better and it was, timed just right, I think Marvel could have had that advantage. Now, here's the difference though. If, let's say, we'll flip it and let's say Star Wars, if it had more content, yeah, it would probably knock Marvel out of the park right now because of the amount of what you could watch and everything
And then
else, and
you're,
then
I
having
mean,
the
you're
quality.
also looking at, if they had more content, would that quality go down? And that's really kind of like what you'd be looking at,
So again, that's the thing. It's like you're gonna have to give one up over the other. And
Right.
it sucks, but reality is when it comes down to Marvel and Star Wars. I mean, it's also personal preference, right? I mean, if you like you said, if you like Star Wars better than Marvel or vice versa,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I've always been a Marvel fan. I've always loved watching it. And Matt and I have agreed. We've bonded over that. But like, with Star Wars, I'm not saying that I don't like watching it. I
As
know.
much as I love Marvel, I think I like Star Wars just a little bit more.
Oh, right now, or you're just saying it in
Just in
general?
general.
Mm. I mean, if we're basing it off of right now and the way things are going, I might have to jump over to Star Wars
I
because
mean,
of
I
the
just I personally like the lore, and I personally like that there's. I mean, I do like that there's not a lot of content. Would I like there to be more content? Sure, but when you have more content, like
quality
like
isn't always
Marvel,
there.
it tends to kind of filter and water down that quality, and you tend to now have people who get involved who want to interpret things a different way. You know, with the Acolyte show that's supposed to come out, they're trying to interpret things a whole different way.
Right.
And that's really like, should that show come out? And you can look up this stuff yourselves, but the actors on the show, the writers on the show, 100% don't know what Star Wars is.
Well, I mean, like I keep telling you, man. I mean, when you start looking at people that don't actually know the content that they're creating, I mean
That's a
oh
problem
no,
for
of
me.
course it's
Like,
a big problem. I mean, I already told you. I might as well just go on Chat GPT and like let's start an AI to
that
start a
would be like
conversation.
me right now getting a job as a writer for a Harry Potter movie.
Oh, I was gonna say Pokemon, but sure, we'll do that too.
That too, but
No, I
I would not know what to write. I
I agree.
probably would have to go to Chat GPT and be like,
Start writing stuff.
write me a Pokemon script.
Or write me a Harry Potter novel of some sort.
But they knew nothing about Star Wars. So they're watching the movies and they're like grinding through these movies and they're like, oh, that's what a lightsaber does. Oh, this is this guy. Like, as they're writing.
See,
That's
no,
crazy.
no. Like at
That's
that point, you
crazy
may
to me.
you need to have some senior people on that project as well. You can't just hopefully have like these young people that
And
don't
that's
have
where
a
I love
clue.
that Dave Filoni is now that like head creative guy because now he has a chance to get in there and go,
Excuse me.
what is this shit that you're making right here?
Right. And what exactly are you good about to be putting out? Because now that's my reputation, on the line.
Right, because I mean, you look at Dave Filoni, and like I said, he did Clone Wars, he's done Rebels, and he's been part of Mandalorian, Ahsoka. He's been part of all of these shows,
Right.
and now you have this one show that's supposed to be canon,
And if it's shit, then there's a big
and
problem.
it's going to be a big pile of shit. And
No, and I mean, and I
yeah,
agree. I mean, it sucks that when you start looking at, the MCU shows, like, not having, when you have, of course, when you have Kevin Feige, great. In the beginning of what he was doing, it was amazing. Made sense. A lot of it, was great. But like, I don't know what he's doing now, especially with these TV shows.
you
Like,
need to slow down.
he needs to slow down. And like I said, and this is where he needs to pull that Dave Filoni card and be like, listen, you want to make some good shit instead of pumping out bullshit, then you need to slow down, maybe make some more content, in it and make it good at the same time, and not make it so that way it's only like 5 episodes and it doesn't really tell you anything. And it just tells you a bunch of shit.
I definitely don't want to go like too far into this, but like I feel like somewhere in Marvel meetings, they probably had discussed, we need to show more diversity in our projects. And instead of being like, well, here's our diversity card, we're going to put it right here. The whole friggin' deck was like 52 pickup. And that's what we're dealing with now is the whole deck of cards is all over the place. And instead of just having some diversity, now it's all diversity.
It's true. You're right.
And that's really kind of like nobody wanted this like this much. Nobody wanted this. And it's like you have now Iron Fist that's supposed to be female. And now, there's characters in the Blade movie that are
female.
Like, you have Blade, the rest of the cast is female. Like, and I'm not bashing females in cinema.
What does that have to do with anything?
When you don't have any male characters in Marvel, when your fan base is at least 70% male, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah. I mean, so like I said, when you start to look at how they transition from the beginning of the MCU till now, and then when you start, again, having all these diverse characters and doing all this, again, even when you look at Star Wars, it's not like they're changing every single character and making it the opposite of what it's supposed to be. So, I mean, imagine if Ahsoka was a boy and Obi-Wan was a woman, and then let's say Darth Vader is now a woman too, and then flip-flop, you know what I mean? So like if we all switched it up on that, I guarantee everyone would be like, what the hell is going on? And why are we doing it like this? And that's exactly what Marvel's trying to do basically now. It's like, oh, well, hey,
they're changing everything when all they needed to do was make these characters that were sitting on the sidelines already and put them into the limelight without having to go, well, you're dead now. You're going to be dead in the next movie. You're going to retire. You're just not going to be seen anymore.
You're just going to randomly show up out of the clear blue because that's just how we feel like it.
You're giving your powers to her, and Hulk is, you're
hanging out with the sun.
Who knows where you're going to be?
Yeah.
But you're going to be off somewhere, and then we're going to have She-Hulk come in because that's what we do.
No, and like I said, and that's where, it just mind boggles me that Disney doesn't want to listen and be like, listen, you have all these great characters, you have all this great content, and why are you now, changing literally the whole lineup of everything on the whole planet?
It's just and that's the problem with the inconsistency, and Star Wars is that, again, I love that Dave Filoni is in this position because now he has that say of going, no, this is not the direction that Star Wars needs to go in. Like, this is the way the project should go in.
Right.
Granted, Star Wars has always been kind of like, I don't want to say always male led, but like you have Vader, you have Luke, you have, Kenobi, all these characters. Yeah. I love the character of Rey. Great character.
Right.
You also have Leia. She wasn't a secondary character at all.
She was a main part of it, especially later on too. I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't need to have, all these characters that are now just literally, and we're not saying it just to say it, guys. We're saying it because we're noticing it more and more. Where literally now it's like, if you're a male, fuck you. Like, that's it. Like, we're done. We don't want you anymore. And it's like, no.
It's just they've taken the diversity card and saying like, we need to be more diverse. And they've kind of just exploded. Like, everybody needs to be from a different gender, race, creed, color. Like, we need everybody to be different.
And it doesn't
and that's
make
not
any
what
sense.
We're asking for. Like, we want inclusion, but we need everybody to be included. Because then when you're excluding, then that's where the problems arise.
Right. And then honestly, at the end of the day, it's like, when you had your fan base that you've literally had since the beginning, and now you're wondering why things are starting to dwindle and things are starting to become shit, it's because, again, when you're also not building that quality and the content and the character development and all these other things, and then you're just making a fucking joke out of these characters, and then you're like, oh, fuck 'em, we don't care. Like Moon Knight, again, She-Hulk, some of these characters, why the fuck would you bring them in if you're not planning on using them ever again?
Exactly.
What a shocker.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these shows are exactly that. Like you just put out this content, and some of these shows you can see it in the CGI. They're not finished. Like the CGI is blurry in a lot of these shows.
Look at She-Hulk.
Watch Ant-Man, Quantumania.
Yep.
Almost every single scene where there's like action and movement, look at the CGI. It's blurry. Why? Because they pushed out these shows and they moved up the timeline for Ant-Man.
And they should have just finished the damn movie.
But they couldn't finish Ant-Man because they were working on these shows and Ant-Man at the same time.
So it sounds like, well, right. And what they should have done is focused on one thing at a time. Then, work on your shows. Then do all these things. Trust me, the shows are secondary, in my opinion. I would rather see a good movie that comes out.
The show should be secondary to the movie. But if you're going to do, movies and TV shows, you need to have two separate crews, like completely two separate crews.
And have that distinguish of like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and split off.
This complete crew is on TV, you're on the TV show crew.
Right.
Or this complete crew, crew is in charge of just doing TV show, like movies, like two complete production companies. They're Disney.
Right. Well, or just have two different management teams and saying, hey, this is what it is. Right. Go for it. And then you can, pick and choose whatever. You do you at that point, but like have your set crews and start building, because
that's not the way it goes. The way that it goes is like they have the movie and they have a TV show. They film the scenes and then they send all that stuff to this one place. And then when they do the TV show, they send it to that one place. And then they're working, they have half the crew working on a TV show, the other half working on the movie. And then they go, hey, we need to up the timeline on the movie. So can you put that stuff out first? Yeah.
Sure. Let me half-ass
So now
this.
They stop doing the TV show for a bit and they work on the movie. And then they go, hey, is the TV show done yet?
You're like, no, I've been working on the damn movie. So which one do you want?
So then they only do like 80% of what needs to be done. And they go to the TV show and they work on the TV show. And then the TV show's half done and the movie is 80%, so none of the CGI is 100% done. And then you go, well, the Flash movie, they did it on purpose. Do you think they would come out and say, we didn't finish the CGI?
No, because they're going to do it because they don't care at that point. Because
they come out and say, oh, yeah, we made it like that on purpose. Tell me what again, motherfucker? You made the CGI like that on purpose? You purposefully made the Flash movie CGI like shit? Like that's what you're telling us right now.
Apparently so, Matt. Apparently that's what they like to do.
Oh, okay.
Because again, it's DC S-Worlds, baby. Like that's all they care about. They don't care if it's going to be fucking main canon or not, because they're going to reboot the whole damn series anyways.
This was their movie to reset the DC, timeline for the rest of the DC, universe.
Yeah, they don't give a fuck. They've already established that.
The rubbery ass CGI that you had in this movie was on purpose.
Hey, I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay.
Now that we've already talked about all this shit for too damn long, guys, we appreciate all that you do. We appreciate the fact that, we're able to do all this. I mean, now man, what are we doing? This is what, the 49th episode, if I'm taking a guess?
48th, I think.
48th?
I don't know. I lost count.
You lost count. The point is, guys, we're almost at a year. It's crazy. Matt and I have been doing this almost a year, which is absolutely insane, because honestly, I didn't even think we were going to make it past, what was it, the episode 20? What was that? It was like there was a certain amount that we had to make, because if you don't make it over that.
Yeah, most podcasts, if you don't make it over 20, I think they said.
So yeah, I mean, shit, we've been doing it now for almost a year, and we're trying to.
Halfway through February is when we started, roughly.
so
15th.
we technically started the day after Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
is
15th.
is how we did the math here, but like we're almost at our 1 year mark, man. That's crazy. You know. But anyways, guys, we appreciate everything you guys do. We love you guys. Hopefully we'll get some more content out, Um, when it comes down to, our merch store and stuff, man, we still
Check
got
it
some
out.
stuff.
There's a lot of stuff in there, man. Pins are real cheap, $7.
Yeah, I mean, and hell, what Matt was saying too is that if there's any ideas, when it comes to like different T-shirts, if like you wanted a hoodie or if you want a Speedo, if that's what you're choosing. I'm kidding. You don't have to get a Speedo.
Oh,
I'm just
boy.
saying. No, what I'm saying is, guys, is if there's different ideas, right? If there's different things you want to do, let us know.
If any of those designs like you want on a hoodie, we can make it happen. Just it's real easy.
Right, and the best part is like with the T-shirts and the pins. I mean, a lot of them that Matt's been doing, I'm pretty sure they're all done now. But the fact that they're all intertwined, right? So you could literally get all the pins, and not saying you have to get all the shirts, but you could get whatever you want, right? So there's so many possibilities. But again, in order for you guys to let us know, just hit us up, man, on our email or Instagram, Facebook, whatever, man. Just let us know. But as always,
Stay geeky.